Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Now, it's been quite a while since my last Star Wars Black Series action figure review, but I haven't stopped collecting the figures. In fact, I've probably collected more of these figures in the past year than I have ever before. And I have a great soft spot, especially for this Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary wave that we've been seeing on these retro cards lately. Even though, interestingly, the 6-inch line doesn't seem to be particularly popular amongst collectors and fans, I love them. And so today I'm delighted to be actually looking at a long sought after re-release of Jabba the Hutt. Now, this figure was initially released a good long while ago, just after the series actually launched from Hasbro, and then has become incredibly scarce since. But he has been released for the 40th anniversary with brand new retro packaging. So I was very eager to get my hands on him and share my thoughts with you. Now, first of all, of course, we need to talk about the packaging, and as I said, it is that retro Return of the Jedi packaging that we saw from Kenner all those years ago, and in fact, we can even see the Kenner logo in the bottom right-hand corner. Now, this is a long oblong box, of course, so it's quite thin and long, but it's pretty cool, and I do really like this artwork, which will definitely be very nostalgic to anyone who grew up in the 80s and bought the original Return of the Jedi figures all those years ago. And even for someone like me who grew up in the 90s, this is still way more preferable to the traditional Black Series packaging that we used to get. And the first initial release just had that very typical black borders, very little images and very little design and colour to the packaging. This is a lot more colourful, it's a lot more fun, it's a lot more vibrant, and it's very evocative of a bygone era. I'm pleased to say that the packaging is nice and sturdy with a nice thick outer card layer which opens with foldable flaps at the top end. Inside is a protective cardboard shelf, and within that holds the actual figure within rice paper. Now, this is pretty easy to disassemble and pull out the packaging, which is fantastic, and I did want to point out that you might want to keep a special eye out for this special little mini packaging inside which actually holds Salacious Crumb. It was actually easy to miss this first time around and I had to search for him a couple of times until I realised he was just hiding away at the back of this card protector. Now, Jabba the Hutt does come as one piece, there's no assembly required, and he's quite an impressive scale. Like, he is a good size, he's quite long and quite tall, and makes quite a strong impression in your collection. Now, in terms of the sculpting, I think they've done a pretty fantastic job with Jabba. This looks pretty screen accurate to me. I really like the use of paint apps on this figure, particularly in the head. I think they've done a good job with the eyes there, bringing lots of different colours to the fore. I really like how there's a number of different washes running through the head. We can actually see a little bit of shading around the nose and around the mouth. Of course, we see some of the saliva dripping down all over his face there. This is painted in with a white paint, which looks really good. And we can see some different colours of brown, green, beige, and all sort of gradients naturally over the figure. And as I said, there's individual areas with extra shading and washes as well to just give it a little bit more depth, shadowing and texture, which looks really, really good. So this is a really nicely presented figure. What's also interesting is that the top layer to the head is actually made of a soft rubber. Now, this is because there's an action feature, which I'll come to in a moment, but it actually does have a nice texture to the touch. Because it is a rubber, it definitely feels different to anything else in the collection and gives it a bit more of a lifelike quality in a strange way. Now, the rest of the body, the arms and the tail and the main body, is a hard plastic. So there is that slight disconnect there, and you can see a slight discrepancy between the shading between the various colours of green and yellow between the plastic and the rubber pieces. But for the most part, it's quite seamless and it works quite well. So let's take a look at the articulation. There is one major point, a swivel at the top of the head there that allows the figure to rotate all the way around, which is great. There are ball joints in each of the shoulders, allowing the arms to lift up and out, which is fantastic. Now, I did mention an action feature, and that is linked to the top of this arm, because when you lift his arm up and down, this triggers a mechanism in the mouth that allows the mouth to open and shut on a hinge. So you can get the impression of Jabba talking when opening his mouth, which is very, very cool. And there is a pin swivel at the elbow as well, allowing that lower forearm to rotate all the way around and hinge to about 90 degrees. Then at the wrist there's another pin swivel there, allowing the hand to rotate all the way around and of course hinge forwards and backwards as well. So what goodies does he come with? Well, he does come with a handful of accessories, including this shelf effect which wraps around the figure. Now this comes in two pieces and you push it together to snap into place. Now this is quite nicely sculpted, it looks pretty screen accurate, but there's nothing in the way of shading, which is a little bit disappointing. He also has what looks like a vape tank and of course his sort of pipe as well, which is pretty cool. But that's not all, because he also comes with another figure, Salacious Crumb. The tank of course fits nice and snugly into the holder on the top of the backdrop there, which is pretty nice, and the pipe has a translucent plastic tube which hooks into place. Now this took a little bit of perseverance to get it to hook into place, and it did feel a little bit flimsy, but once it's in, it's nice and secure, and of course Jabba can grab a hold of his pipe, and this looks really nicely done actually. I think this works very, very well. As you can see, Jabba has absolutely no issues holding this pipe, and it looks really authentic and lifelike, which is pretty fantastic. This is quite impressive. I think they've done a good job with this. My only real criticism here is that it does feel a little bit like it's lacking a backdrop. Like, these pieces are really nice to world build and they're really fun accessories, but it really feels like we needed some kind of card backdrop here to recreate Jabba's palace, because without it, it does look a little bit odd. But let's not forget, we do of course get that additional minifigure of Salacious Crumb, which is quite a nice touch. I do really quite like this figure. Obviously it is a lot smaller, but there's plenty of detail and some nice paint taps on it, and it looks pretty authentic to what we see in the film, which is great. Now, he does have a sort of swivel at the top of the neck, so his head can spin all the way around. There is a ball joint in the top of each shoulder, allowing that arm to lift up and out a little bit, which is pretty cool. And then he also has some articulation in the top of the hips there, allowing the legs to kick forwards and backwards, out to the side, and there's even some at the knee as well, allowing that lower leg to hinge backwards and forwards. And of course, we mustn't forget, there's additional articulation at the base of the tail, allowing that tail to rotate all the way around, in and out as well, because it's on that fantastic ball joint. So this looks pretty cool, and it's actually quite good for a figure of this size. And of course he can just perch quite nicely on top of Jabba. Now there's nowhere to specifically hold him, but gravity seems to do the job, and he seems to fit nice and securely there without too much issue. So he looks really cool. I think he does complete the look. I'm not quite sure of the scaling, whether he's actually a little bit too large. I can't quite recall. He looks a little bit too big to my eyes, but hey, I think they've done a really nice job with him. This works really nice, and it definitely gives a little bit of added value to this set overall, so I'm very grateful to have him included. So this looks pretty decent. And if you're wondering how this figure measures up when it comes to scaling, here he is standing next to Boba Fett, a standard 6-inch action figure from the Black Series. So as you can see, he's not quite as tall as Boba Fett there, he's just slightly under, but he's more or less the height of a 6-inch action figure, and of course he is a good few times as long. So this is pretty decent scaling. Again, it's hard to tell how accurate this is. I do get the impression in the film that Jabba's maybe a little bit taller than this, but then he is lifted up on a plinth, so looking down on the other characters, so maybe that's just how that's presented in the film, and I'm not getting an accurate sense of scaling. But this looks roughly comparable. It looks pretty decent, and I think they look really nice together. And of course we have a great number of figures that we can put in Jabba's palace now. Of course we have the Return of the Jedi Boba Fett that I have there, but we have the Chewbacca in chains, we have the Luke Skywalker in his Jedi robes, we have Princess Leia, both the slave Leia version and of course Boushh, and of course there's Lando in his skiff outfit and Bib Fortuna as well, and hopefully we'll get a few more of the Jabba Palace aliens in the next few releases, one would hope, that could really flesh out a really nice display piece here. So I think that's all that's really missing for this figure, is a nice backdrop to house all of these figures in, and it's a shame that we don't have something in that line. So in terms of my overall rating for this figure, I'm happy to give this a nice healthy 4 stars. I think this is a really nice figure. It's very nicely presented. I really do like the action feature of the mouth movement up and down. I think the accessories it comes with, really fun. I do like some of those world building environments, particularly that vape tank there, and of course having Salacious Crumb is a nice little extra. So I think this looks great. I think the presentation is really good. I think they're doing a good job with the figure. That being said, I'm not sure it's worth the price point. Now, I probably sound like I'm always nitpicking in this area, but this was quite expensive, and I'm not quite sure how they're justifying that, because there's not an awful lot that you're getting for your money here. Yes, the packaging is very nice, the figure itself is very well done, there's some decent paint apps on it, and it looks pretty good, but essentially, it is largely just two pieces here. The base mold, there's nothing going on in the tail, there's no movement, there's no texture here, there's nothing there to really make this jump out as me as being an expensive figure to produce. Yes, there is some articulation in the top of the head there, they've used rubber and it's got that articulation in the mouth, but I'm not quite sure how they're justifying the extraordinary price point of over £70 in the UK for this, which I think is roughly, what, $70 in the US. This seems extraordinarily expensive for what you're actually getting, and I'm not quite sure how they justify that. But as a figure, as an addition to the collection, is very, very welcome. I'm very impressed in terms of his overall look. He does look fantastic. He does create his own sort of display, which is brilliant, and I'm sure you could build something on this yourself to make something really special and fantastic with the other figures in this line. If you've got skills in that area of building dioramas, he's going to be absolutely wonderful to build one around. So this is a really fun figure. He's one I'm just really glad to have out on display permanently, because he just looks so cool and different. So I think they've done a really nice job of him. I'm a little bit hesitant about that price point, but as I said, as a figure, yeah, a healthy 4 stars. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos soon.